My name's Jack. I'm 40, divorced, and I live alone in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Cincinnati. Pretty average life. Got my job in logistics, pay my taxes, watch football, yell at politicians on TV. You know, the usual. Everything was normal until Yusuf moved in next door. He wasn't loud, didn't throw wild parties. He actually mowed his lawn twice a week, which made the rest of us look like slobs. But it wasn't his yard or his car or anything like that. It was him. The man was just so damn calm. All the time, no matter what was going on. And he was Muslim, wore that white cap sometimes, had a long beard, prayed in his backyard under the setting sun, always greeted everyone with that soft, peace be upon you thing. The kids loved him. Even Mrs. Palmer from down the block, the grumpiest lady I've ever met, started baking him cookies. Me, I couldn't stand him. It wasn't anything he did. It was more what he represented. Every night on the news, it was the same thing. Terrorism, extremism, something about Sharia law. And now I had that right next door to me. No thank you. I started keeping tabs. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But I wanted to be prepared in case he did something sketchy. I'd peek through the blinds when his friends came over. I listened through the wall when I thought I heard him talking Arabic on the phone. I even started writing down the license plate numbers of his guests. Then one day, I overheard him at the mailbox, talking to another neighbor about patience being a form of worship or something. And something inside me snapped. You know what? I thought, I bet he's just repeating stuff he's memorized. Probably doesn't even understand what he's saying. So I decided I'd prove it. I'd outsmart him at his own game. I'd study his religion, his so-called holy book, and I'd rip his arguments to shreds in front of everyone. It wasn't about curiosity. It was about revenge. I downloaded a PDF of the Quran, ordered a few anti-Islam books online, started watching hours of YouTube debates. I made notes, highlighted contradictions, memorized verses I thought were ridiculous or violent. I was preparing for war, a war of words. Then came the day I picked a fight. We were both taking our trash cans out, and I casually dropped a line like, "Hey, Yusuf, I read something weird in your Quran yesterday. Mind if I ask you about it?" He smiled like I just asked him if he liked apple pie. "Of course, Jack. Go ahead." So I quoted a verse about fighting and asked if Islam really promotes violence. I was ready for fireworks, but he didn't flinch. He just said, "Context is important. That verse was revealed during a battle when Muslims were under attack. There's another verse right after that says if they stop fighting, then you must also stop." Then he added, "But I'm happy to show you some other verses too, ones about compassion, justice, and kindness." I didn't know what to say. He wasn't offensive. He didn't raise his voice. Hell, he even invited me for tea. Tea? After I accused his entire religion of being violent? I declined, of course. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. How could someone be so composed, so unfazed by someone practically spitting in his face? That night, I sat back down with the Quran. Not because I wanted more ammo, but because I needed to understand how this guy stayed so damn grounded. And that's when it started. I came across a verse that said, "Repel evil with that which is better. Then the one between whom and you there was hatred will become as though he were a devoted friend." Quran 41:34. I stared at that line for a long time. It felt personal, like the book was talking to me, not about me. The man I wanted to destroy wasn't fighting back. He was responding with kindness. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept picturing his smile, his calm, the way he picked up trash on the sidewalk, even when it wasn't his. And for the first time, I wasn't sure who the bad guy was anymore. You ever read something that makes you feel like someone's been watching your entire life? That's how I felt reading that verse. Repel evil with that which is better. It haunted me. I had it stuck in my head like a song you can't shake off. I even wrote it down on a sticky note and slapped on my fridge. At first, just to stare at it, like some kind of challenge. But the more I looked at it, the more it felt like a mirror. So I kept reading. I didn't tell anyone, obviously. Can you imagine me, Jack, the guy who cursed at the news every time the word Islam came up? sitting in his living room, reading the Quran like it was a self-help book? Yeah, I wasn't ready for that conversation. But here's the weird part. The more I read, the less angry I felt. There were chapters about mercy, forgiveness, respecting parents, taking care of the poor, even protecting the rights of people you disagree with. It wasn't at all what I expected. I was looking for hate, and instead I kept finding peace. But I wasn't ready to admit that yet. So I doubled down. Maybe it's just the English translation, I told myself. Maybe it's sugar-coated. So I started watching debates again, looking for dirt. I joined forums, messaged ex-Muslims, looked for anything that would reinforce what I already believed. But none of it felt solid anymore. It all sounded like noise. Meanwhile, Yusuf just kept being Yusuf. He waved at me every morning, shoveled the snow off the sidewalk in front of my house without being asked. Once, I caught him leaving a warm meal on old Mr. Connolly's porch when he was sick. He didn't even knock, just walked away. Who does that? Then one Friday, I saw him walk into his car in a white robe and cap. I was about to duck behind the curtain like usual, but something stopped me. Instead, I stepped outside. He turned, surprised but still smiling. "Hey, Jack, where you headed?" I asked, playing dumb. "Friday prayer," he said. "The mosque down on Harrison." I hesitated. "Do they let non-Muslims in?" He paused for a second, then said gently, "Of course, you're always welcome." I didn't go, not that time, but I thought about it, and that scared me more than anything, because something inside me was changing. This wasn't just about proving a point anymore. This was about me, my identity, my pride, my ego, and it was unraveling. A week later, I picked another verse, this time about charity. I walked over to Yusuf's porch, knocked on his door, and as soon as he opened it, I fired at him like a missile. What does this mean? Spend from what you love? That sounds manipulative, guilt-tripping people into giving. He didn't react the way I expected. Again, instead, he invited me in. I froze. For a second, I actually considered walking away. But then I remembered that sticky note on my fridge. And before I knew it, I was sitting on his couch, drinking mint tea and listening to soft Turkish music in the background. He explained the verse. It means true generosity is when you give what actually matters to you, not leftovers, not what's easy. It's not about guilt. It's about sincerity. Then he added, it's like, if someone needed help and all you gave them was your spare change, did you really feel anything? I didn't answer, because I had done that countless times, given just enough to silence the guilt, never more. And here was this man, giving without asking, smiling without agenda, open his home to someone who tried to humiliate him. What kind of person wins like that? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, hearing his words in my head, feeling something burning in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not resentment, guilt, and maybe a strange kind of hope. I got up at 2 a.m., sat down at the kitchen table, opened the Quran again, and whispered out loud, "God, if you're real, if this is from you, then show me something." I didn't expect lightning bolts or voices in my head. But what came next wasn't nothing either, because the next morning, Yusuf knocked on my door. He wasn't carrying a Quran or a lecture. He just had a tray of fresh Turkish pastries and said, after Yusuf handed me those pastries, he didn't linger. No lecture, no invitation, just a smile and a quiet, "Have a peaceful day," and then he walked away. I stared at that tray like it was glowing. I don't know what hit me harder, the gesture itself or the fact that it felt like a response to the prayer I mumbled the night before. I wasn't the praying type, never had been, but something about that moment made my chest tighten, like maybe I had been heard. That whole day felt different. I sat on the porch for a while just listening to birds, watching the wind move through the trees. No TV, no YouTube debates, no forums, just silence. And for once, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full. I started going through my old notes, the ones I made when I was preparing for war. I looked at them differently now. Not like a playbook, but like a timeline of a guy who was angry, bitter, and scared of things he didn't understand. That guy was me, and I didn't like him very much. Later that week, I saw Yusuf unloading groceries from his car and ran over to help. He tried to stop me. No, no. Please, you don't have to. I know, I said, but I want to. He paused for a second, then smiled. Okay, Jack. We brought the bags in, and again he offered me tea. This time, I didn't hesitate. We sat at his kitchen table, and I finally asked, "Why are you like this?" He tilted his head. Like what? You never get mad. You never argue. Even when I was being a total jerk, you were patient. Why? He took a sip of tea before answering. My teacher once told me, when someone throws dirt at you, don't throw it back. Plant a flower instead. I try to live like that. I scoffed. Yeah, well, that's great for you. But not everyone can be that peaceful. He looked at me, not with judgment, but something else. Something like, hope. You could be. That night, I started reading again, but not with the goal of finding proof or contradictions. This time, I read like a man searching for water in the desert. I started with Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening chapter. Just 7 lines. But those lines hit harder than anything I'd ever read. They weren't just poetic, they felt personal, like a whisper in the heart. Guide us to the straight path. I said it out loud, and this time I meant it. One day, as I walked past Yusuf's house, I noticed his garage door slightly open. I knocked, but no answer. I peeked inside and found him inside, working on an old bike. Need help? I asked. He looked surprised, then laughed. Always. We spent hours in that garage. Grease on our hands, music playing softly from his phone, some Turkish singer with a haunting voice. Between fixing chains and adjusting brakes, we talked. Not about religion, not directly, but about life, regret, mistakes. I told him about my divorce, about how I pushed everyone away, how I blamed the world for everything, politicians, immigrants, Muslims, you name it. It felt good to say out loud. He just listened. No sermon. No, I told you so. Just a nod in the quiet. I've been lost before, too. That night, I didn't read anything. I just sat in bed and cried. I don't even know why. Maybe it was relief. Maybe guilt. Maybe both. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't angry anymore. And that terrified me. Because if the anger was gone, what was left? The next morning, I knocked on Yusuf's door. When he opened it, I didn't even say hello. I just asked, "Can I come with you?" He didn't ask where. He didn't need to. He just nodded. So that Friday, I went to the mosque. It wasn't what I expected. No shouting. No politics. Just people taking off their shoes, smiling at strangers, offering water, making space for newcomers. The khutbah, the sermon, was about humility. The imam spoke gently, reminding everyone that no matter what we know or achieve, we're still just travelers on a temporary road. I sat in the back, quiet, watching, absorbing. When everyone stood to pray, I didn't join. I just watched. And I've never seen anything more synchronized, more peaceful. It wasn't robotic. It was rhythmic, like waves hitting the shore. Each movement filled with meaning, like their bodies were saying things their mouths didn't have to. And for the first time in my life, I felt what I can only describe as awe. Not fear, not confusion. Just awe. After the prayer, Yusuf didn't say much. We just got back in the car and drove home in silence. But at my front door, he turned to me and said, "You don't have to rush anything. Truth doesn't chase, it waits." Then he smiled and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was restless, but because I finally knew where I was headed. And for once, I wasn't afraid. I don't know why, but I felt like you could use something sweet today. I don't remember exactly when I knew. Maybe it was that first time Yusuf invited me in for tea. Maybe it was that Quran verse taped to my fridge. Maybe it was that Friday prayer, watching rows of strangers move as one, chasing something bigger than themselves. But somewhere along the line, I stopped searching for ammo and started searching for peace. I spent the next few weeks in reflection. Quiet mornings, long walks, less news, fewer arguments. I started noticing things I'd ignored for years, like the sound of birds at sunrise, the smell of rain, the kindness in strangers' small gestures. Yusuf kept checking in, never pushing. Sometimes he'd leave a book at my door with a sticky note. Thought you might like this chapter. Other times, he'd just send a simple text. Sunset looks beautiful tonight. Step outside. And every time I did, I felt a little more human again. Then one night, it hit me. I was sitting alone on my porch, Quran in my lap, stars above me, and I whispered, "Okay, I believe." I didn't shout it. I didn't even fully understand what it would mean. But I knew I wasn't the same man who once set out to destroy his neighbor's faith. I was someone reborn. The next morning, I knocked on Yusuf's door. He opened it, smiled, and before he could even greet me, I said, "I think I'm ready." He didn't ask, "Ready for what?" He knew. He invited me in, and we sat side by side. He explained what the Shahada meant, bearing witness that there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. He didn't dramatize it. No long speeches, just sincerity. I repeated the words, slowly, carefully, and when I was done, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Welcome, brother." It was the first time anyone had called me that in years, and meant it. We prayed together that afternoon, my first real prayer. I stumbled through it, messed up the motions, forgot what hand goes where, but Yusuf didn't laugh. He gently corrected me, one step at a time, and when I bowed for first time, my forehead touching the ground, I felt something leave me, something heavy, something old. It was like my soul exhaled. Over the next few days, I told a few people. Some were supportive, others not so much. My brother called me crazy. A coworker made some tasteless jokes. Even my old college buddy sent me a long message about being brainwashed. I expected all of it, but I didn't expect how little it would matter to me, because for the first time in a long, long time, I knew who I was. One day, a man from our neighborhood, Dan, 2 houses down, came up to me and said, "Hey, Jack, you and Yusuf, you guys real close now." "Yeah," I said, "you could say that." He gave me a weird look and added, "Guess people really can change, huh?" I smiled and said, "Not just change. Wake up." Yusuf and I started volunteering together at a local shelter. No one there cared what we believed. They just needed help. Food, blankets, a warm word, and we gave what we could, side by side. Sometimes I still get flashbacks to who I was. The version of me that watched too much cable news, that assumed things, that lived with walls up, fists clenched, always ready for a fight. That version of me thought Yusuf was the enemy. Turns out he was the answer. I wanted to break him, but he showed me something stronger than pride, louder than hate, deeper than fear. He showed me mercy, patience, and a faith that didn't yell, but whispered, and I listened. So if you're still the kind of person who looks at someone and only sees a headline, if you convince yourself that you already know what those people believe, I have one request. Meet one. Sit down. Share tea. Ask questions. Listen. You might be surprised by what you find. I know I was, because the man I once wanted to destroy became my brother. My name's Tom. I'm 35, single, and if you'd asked anyone in my building 2 months ago, they would have said I kept to myself. And they'd be right. I wasn't exactly friendly. People annoyed me. Their small talk, their loud kids, their politics, especially the fake smiles. I'd lost my mom a year ago, cancer, and after that I just shut down. My world got smaller, quieter, and colder. So when the apartment below mine got rented, I wasn't thrilled. The new tenant moved in quietly. No big truck, no family swarming around, just one man, a couple suitcases, and a bookshelf. I saw him once on the stairs. He nodded at me, offered a small smile, and said, "Good evening." That's it. No hand outstretched. No long introduction. Just calm. Something about it rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was his accent, soft African, couldn't place it. Or maybe it was his clothes, loose-fitting tunic, simple and clean, Or maybe it was the prayer mat I saw tucked under his arm. But deep down, I think it was a peace in his face. I didn't trust peace like that. He kept to himself. No noise, no drama. The building got quieter, honestly. Cleaner, too. I started noticing trash wasn't piling up near the bins. Someone was organizing the laundry room. I had a good guess who it was. And then there was the smell. Every Friday evening, something fragrant would drift up through the vents. Spices, herbs, slow-cooked lamb maybe? My stomach would growl, but I'd never admit it. Instead, I'd grumble and open a window. Then one evening, I came home to find a small plate of food on my doormat. A sticky note read, "Friday meal, peace be upon you. Musa." I stared at it like it was a bomb. I didn't touch it, just left it there for hours. Eventually, I picked it up and tossed it in the fridge. Later that night, I ate it cold, and it was amazing. That was the first time I Googled anything about Islam. Not because I was curious, but because I wanted to dislike him with more precision. See, I'd grown up with a certain image of Muslims. You know the one. Angry, strict, always yelling in the streets or on the news. Foreign, aggressive. Musa wasn't any of those things. And that annoyed me more than if he'd been. It was like he didn't fit the role I had written for him in my head. So I started watching videos, debates, found the loudest critics of Islam, and absorbed every word. I highlighted verses of the Quran people claimed were violent, backward, or oppressive. I made a list, and I waited for a chance to confront him. That chance came one Sunday afternoon. He was sitting alone in the small courtyard out back, reading under a tree. I walked past him once, then turned back. "Hey," I said, "you got a minute?" He looked up and smiled gently. "Sure." I sat down across from him, not entirely sure what I was doing, but my mouth took over. I read something in the Quran the other day. Kind of disturbing. Mind if I ask about it? He didn't flinch, just nodded once. Of course. So I quoted a verse I barely understood. Something about fighting, one of those verses taken out of context a million times. I waited for him to get defensive, but he didn't. He just explained calmly, gave context, talked about the time it was revealed, about self-defense, about restraint. Then he said, "There's also a verse right after that, about peace. Would you like to read it?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up and said, "Just curious." But I wasn't. I was threatened, because nothing about his reaction matched what I wanted him to be. That night, I read the verse he mentioned, and then the one after that, and the one after that, and I hated how normal it all sounded. It wasn't fire and brimstone. It was measured, thoughtful, even beautiful in places. I told myself it was just good PR. That guys like Musa were the exception. But part of me, the quiet, angry, lonely part, knew better. The next morning, I saw him in the stairwell. He smiled again. And for the first time, I didn't smile back. Because deep down, I wasn't ready to see him as human. I still wanted to beat him. Not physically, mentally. Theologically, I wanted to out-argue him. To catch him in some contradiction. To break that calm mask he wore like armor. But I didn't realize it then. That mask wasn't hiding anything. It was who he really was. The weird thing was, after that first conversation, I wanted another. I kept telling myself I was trying to catch him, to expose some hypocrisy. But the truth was, I just couldn't stop thinking about how calm he stayed, how he didn't argue or try to make me look dumb. He just answered. So I poked again. "Hey, Musa," I said next time I saw him near the mailbox, "does your religion really say women should obey their husbands no matter what?" He didn't even raise an eyebrow. He just said, "Not quite. Islam gives both men and women responsibilities. But obedience isn't blind. It's based on mutual respect." Then he smiled, like he knew I was baiting him and didn't mind. He even added, "There's a chapter called The Women. Maybe read it and let me know what you think." I nodded, pretending I would, but that night I actually did. And I hated how balanced it sounded. It didn't match the memes. It didn't match the angry headlines or the fear-mongering videos. It felt like someone had handed me a puzzle, and the pieces weren't where I thought they'd be. A week later, I saw Moose again, this time sitting in the courtyard with that same small book open in his lap. I noticed it had bookmarks and notes tucked inside. Not a single page was dog-eared or stained. "Do you actually believe all of it?" I asked without warning. He looked up, surprised. "The Quran." "Yeah, I mean every word." He nodded slowly. "Yes, but not like a checklist, more like a compass." That sentence stuck with me. We ended up talking for over an hour. He told me about how he grew up in Senegal. His father passed away when he was a kid, and his mother raised 5 children by herself. He said the first time he read the Quran seriously, he cried, because it felt like someone finally understood him. I asked him why he moved to America. He paused for a second and said, "Peace of mind." That confused me. "You left home, family, everything for peace of mind?" He smiled. "Sometimes. Peace comes where you don't expect it." Then I asked something I hadn't planned to. "What do you think happens after we die?" He didn't hesitate. "We return to the one who made us, and we're asked about our time here. Not what we own, but who we were, what we did with truth once we saw it." That last part stung, because I'd seen a glimpse of it, and all I did was look for flaws. A few days later, it was my mom's birthday, or would have been. I didn't tell anyone. Just kept my head down, worked late, avoided phone calls. When I got home, I found a small card taped to my door. "I don't know what today means for you, but I said a prayer for your mother tonight. May peace find you. Musa." I stood in that hallway for 5 full minutes, staring at the card like it might vanish. How did he know? I didn't tell him about her. Not really. Just mentioned in passing once that I was done with family. And he remembered and prayed for someone he never met. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling, replaying that sentence over and over. What we did with truth once we saw it. And something cracked. Not a full break, just a fracture, but enough to let the light in. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I knocked on his door. Musa opened it, surprised but warm, and I said, "Can we talk?" "Of course," he said, stepping aside. He poured tea, sat across from me, and waited. I didn't have a speech ready. Just questions. Big ones, ugly ones, honest ones. And he answered all of them. Not like a preacher, like a friend. We talked about God, pain, guilt, ego, doubt. About loneliness. About fear. At one point I asked, "Do you ever get angry?" He chuckled. "Of course. I'm human, but I try not to speak while angry." The Prophet taught us that anger burns the soul faster than fire burns wood. That didn't sound like domination. That sounded like discipline. And I realized he had power, but not the kind I understood. His power came from patience. And mine came from fear. I thought I had him figured out. After weeks of small talks and reading, I decided to take things public. Set a trap so big he couldn't slip away. One Saturday afternoon, I invited a few neighbors over to the courtyard. Quiet folks, some skeptical about Musa, some just curious. I planned to corner him, throw everything I had learned from those anti-Islam videos right in his face. The moment came. I started with a simple question. "Musa, how do you justify violence in the Quran? What about those verses about fighting and killing?" The crowd leaned in. The tension was thick. Musa didn't flinch. He looked at me calmly and said, "Thank you for your question." Then he paused, took a breath. In the Quran, these verses were revealed during times of war, when the early Muslims were defending themselves. He continued, "But Islam forbids aggression. The same Quran says, if they incline to peace, then you must also incline to it." Then he said something that hit me like a punch in the gut. The real jihad, the struggle, is within, against one's own ego and anger. A few neighbors nodded. Others looked surprised. Then, instead of arguing or shouting, Musa simply closed his eyes, bowed his head, and quietly began to pray. The silence was deafening. I stood there stunned. I was waiting for anger, for a fight, for him to call me ignorant or hateful. But instead, he prayed, and something in me cracked. After the prayer, The atmosphere changed. People approached Musa with questions, not challenges. I felt invisible. Later, I caught up with Musa as he was leaving. I said, "Why didn't you answer me back? Why pray?" He smiled softly and said, "Because words can build walls, but prayer builds bridges." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his words. The Real Jihad is within. I thought about my anger, my pride, my bitterness, about the emptiness I carried since my mom died. A week later, Musa invited me to a community event. I almost said no, but something told me to go. When I arrived, I saw people from all walks of life, black, white, young, old, all sharing food, stories, and laughter. Musa introduced me as his neighbor. For the first time in months, I felt welcome. That night, I asked Musa about his past. He told me he grew up in a village torn apart by conflict, lost his parents young, fled to America hoping for peace and a new beginning. I told him about my mom, my loneliness, my anger. He listened without judgment. He said, "Pain is universal. Faith helps us carry it." After that, I looked at the Quran differently, not as a weapon to attack, but as a guide. I realized I was fighting my own demons more than anyone else. I never thought I'd say this out loud, but Musa saved me, not from some external enemy, not from the world, but from myself. After that community event, something inside me changed. I started showing up more, listening more, learning more. One evening, as we sat sipping mint tea in his modest apartment, I asked him, "How do you do it? Stay so calm, so patient, when people come at you like I did?" He smiled softly and said, "I don't seek power or victory, Tom. I seek peace. And peace comes from knowing who you truly are and who your Creator is." That hit me harder than any argument. I thought about my life, the walls I'd built, the bridges I'd burned, the loneliness, the grief, the hate. Then one night, I sat alone with the Quran on my lap. I whispered the words I never thought I'd say. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. The next morning, I knocked on Musa's door. He greeted me like a brother. Together, we prayed my first prayer. It was awkward and imperfect, but it was real. Not everyone understood. My old friends called me crazy. My family was confused, but I didn't care anymore, because I found something that no one could take away. Faith. Musa and I volunteer now at the community center. We share stories, meals, and smiles. We are brothers. If you're watching this and holding on to hate, fear, or judgment, consider this. Sometimes the people you think you need to break are the ones who will heal you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of real change and hope.
I watched her pop open the champagne bottle like she just won the damn lottery. Technically, she did. She stood in the kitchen of the house my father built, laughing with her friends, talking about her early retirement. What she didn't know, that bubbly celebration was about to be the most expensive mistake of her life, you see. When my ex-wife forged those documents and stole my inheritance, she thought I'd crumble. She thought I'd move on and let it go. But what she never realized, I had already started working with my own lawyer. Quietly, meticulously. And on the day she walked into court thinking she'd win again, I walked in with a folder full of receipts and a grin she'll never forget. Asterisk, I still remember the day I got the call. It was a gray Tuesday, mid-October, and I had just clocked out of a brutal 12-hour shift. I was working construction back then, trying to save enough to renovate my dad's old house. It needed a new roof, new plumbing, the works. When my phone buzzed, I almost ignored it, but it was from my dad's lawyer, Ray. "I'm sorry," he said. "Your father passed last night." I don't remember much of what he said after that, just static. Like everything in my head went silent. My dad and I didn't always get along, but he was my only real family left. The next few days were a blur of funeral plans, phone calls, and old photos. And then came the reading of the will. That's when things started to feel off. I sat across from my dad's lawyer in his office, wood-paneled walls, shelves full of thick legal books, and beside me sat her, My ex-wife Vanessa, we'd been divorced for nearly a year. She cheated. I walked clean break, or so I thought. When the lawyer opened the envelope and started reading, I could barely breathe. To my son Raymond Cole, I leave the entirety of my estate, the house, land, savings, and all remaining assets. I exhaled slowly, fighting back tears, until there appears to be a revised will. The lawyer interrupted himself, pulling out a second document. This one's dated 2 months before Mr. Cole's passing, and that's when it happened. This revised version left everything, and I mean everything, to Vanessa. I froze. My eyes locked on her, and she just sat there with the fakest sad smile on her face, pretending to be shocked. "Raymond," she whispered, "I had no idea. Your father and I did talk a lot after the divorce, but I never expected this. Double quotes bulls. *T. My dad hated her. He called her snake in designer heels. There was no chance in hell he changed his will to leave her everything. But proving it, that would be the hard part." The lawyer said the signatures looked valid. The dates matched, the witnesses were there. It looked real. She stood up, wiped a fake tear, and said, "Maybe this is his way of saying goodbye. I'll make sure the house is well taken care of." And just like that, she walked out. With the deed, I hit rock bottom. I crashed on my friend Jared's couch for 2 months. I drank more than I should have. I called every lawyer I could afford, but they all said the same thing. If the documents are legit, you don't have a case. But I knew Vanessa, and I knew she didn't pull this off alone. She was clever, but not clever enough to forge a will without help. That's when I started digging. That I got a job as a handyman just a town over, under the radar. And in the evenings I started doing my own research. I pulled every version of my dad's will, talked to the notary, found the witnesses, tracked their online presence. And finally, I found the first crack in her perfect little fraud. One of the witnesses had moved to Arizona 3 years ago, and hadn't been back since. But wait, the will was supposedly signed just 2 months before Dad passed. Gotcha. That was the first domino. I hired a quiet but sharp legal team, one that worked on contingency. I couldn't pay them up front, but they saw what I saw, a fraud case waiting to blow up. And the best part, I didn't say a word to Vanessa. I let her enjoy the house, let her redecorate, repaint, even host parties. She posted everything online: champagne on the patio, new furniture. One post said, "From heartbreak to homeowner, #blessed." She had no idea I was watching, that I had her every word, every expense, every timeline, all logged and time-stamped. I was letting her build her castle, just so I could pull the foundation out from under it. Cliffhanger, rehooked to next chapter. And then one night I saw her post a story that changed everything. Because someone was in the background, someone I recognized, and they had no idea I was coming. It was a Tuesday night when I saw it. Vanessa had posted another one of her champagne and fake laughter Instagram stories. You'd think she was some kind of influencer, the way she flaunted my dad's house. Sorry, her house like a damn trophy. But I wasn't watching for her. I was watching the background, and there he was, half blurred, but clear enough for me to recognize. Jake Banner, the same Jake who used to do paperwork for sketchy real estate deals back in the day. We crossed paths once at a poker night when he bragged about making signatures appear like magic. He was a notary, or at least he had been until he got busted for falsifying loan docs. I didn't know he was out of jail. And now he was in my house, sipping wine in the kitchen with my ex-wife. That was all I needed. The next morning, I got in my truck and drove 2 hours to find him. Old contacts from my construction days told me where he worked now. Some second-rate mortgage place that looked like it was still stuck in 2008. I waited until lunch and caught him in the parking lot. He looked older, grayer, but the same smug smile. "Ray Cole," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "I need to talk," I said flatly. "About what?" He grinned. "Real estate." I didn't waste time. I showed him the photo from Vanessa's story, paused perfectly on his half face in the background. He flinched. "Relax," I said. "I'm not here to start a fight. I'm here to make a deal." His eyes narrowed. Go on. I laid it out. I knew he notarized the forged will. I had evidence the original witnesses weren't even in the state. If I went to court, his name would be right there with hers. And unlike Vanessa, he was already a convicted felon. But if he cooperated, gave me a signed affidavit admitting the forgery, I'd keep him out of the spotlight. No criminal charges, just a clean takedown of her. He hesitated, smoked, pacing slowly behind his car like he was doing moral math. Then he said the one word I'd been waiting for: deal. The next few weeks were a blur. Jake sent over a signed and notarized affidavit admitting his role in falsifying the second will, including names, dates, and even bank transfers Vanessa made to him through a crypto wallet. Every piece of the puzzle slid into place. My legal team was thrilled. This is airtight, my lawyer grinned. She's gonna fold like a lawn chair. Still, we waited. You don't rush revenge, you let it simmer. Meanwhile, Vanessa was living it up. New car, weekly spa visits, a vacation to Miami, all paid for by what should have been my inheritance. And then came the cherry on top. She listed the house for sale. Yep, the same house my dad spent 40 years paying off. She was going to flip it, cash in, and vanish. That's when we struck. The lawsuit was filed under seal first, so she didn't see it coming. My lawyer arranged for the court to freeze the sale of the house, emergency injunction based on fraudulent ownership claims. A sheriff showed up at her front door the same day the realtor was supposed to take listing photos. I wish I could have seen her face, but the real blow came the following week when she was officially served with court papers, fraud, forgery, civil penalties, and a demand to return everything. She called me. I let it ring. She texted Ray. What the hell is going on? What are you doing? I replied with just one word: justice. I wasn't just suing her, I was suing everyone involved. Jake had given us enough to implicate two other people, one of them Vanessa's sister, who'd posed as a witness in the fake will. The web of lies unraveled fast, and her little empire crumbling. Still, she didn't give up easily. She hired a lawyer, some bulldog type, and tried to turn the tables. She has a claim through emotional connection, her lawyer argued. She cared for the property, maintained it, invested in it. That's when my lawyer dropped the bomb. We have evidence of forged documents, false testimony, and financial fraud. And here's a statement from a co-conspirator. Game over. Asterisk. The court date was set, and even though I already had the truth, I wasn't prepared for what Vanessa would do next, because desperate people don't go down quietly. Asterisk. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, in energy. It smelled like polished floors and worn-out nerves. I wore my only decent suit, dark blue, pressed. My lawyer, Kristen, told me to look calm, confident, not like a man seeking revenge, she said, but like a man standing in truth. Vanessa walked in 15 minutes late, sunglasses on like she was stepping off a red carpet. Her new lawyer, some smug, overconfident guy named Daniel, strutted beside her like he had already won. She didn't even glance my way, but I saw it, that little flicker behind her eyes. Fear. We were in civil court, not criminal yet, but the stakes were massive. If the judge ruled in my favor, she'd lose the house, be forced to return all the funds she spent from my dad's estate, and possibly face perjury charges. First, Vanessa's side gave their version. Mr. Cole had a strained relationship with his father, Daniel began, standing tall like he was reading a Shakespeare monologue. In his final months, Mr. Cole Sr. grew close to Vanessa again. She visited him, cared for him. He expressed multiple times his wish to leave her the home. He pulled out pictures of Vanessa sitting on my dad's porch, ones she posted months ago. All smiles and filters like that proved anything. Kristen didn't flinch. She waited, patiently, and when it was our turn, she stood and simply said, "Your Honor, we have clear documented evidence that the revised will was forged." And then she dropped a stack of papers on the bench like a bomb. We presented Jake Banner's affidavit, bank transfers, the false notarization, and the kicker, a sworn statement from one of the fake witnesses, now cooperating in exchange for immunity. The judge raised an eyebrow. "These are very serious allegations." Vanessa leaned forward and whispered something to her lawyer. Then everything spiraled. Daniel stood up again and, to our surprise, didn't deny the forgery. Instead, he pivoted. Double quotes. Yes, Your Honor, the will was amended. Mistakes were made, he said, but Vanessa acted under the belief that she was honoring Mr. Cole's final wishes. The actual forgery was orchestrated by others. She was manipulated. My jaw dropped. She was throwing Jake, her co-conspirator and party buddy, straight under the bus. She's not a criminal, Daniel insisted. She's a grieving woman who got caught in something bigger than herself. Grieving. This woman posted selfies in my father's armchair 3 days after the funeral. Kristen didn't need to say much after that. She turned to the judge and said, "With all due respect, this grieving woman withdrew $84,000 from the estate to lease a luxury vehicle and take a trip to Miami. And here are the receipts." She laid them on the desk. One by one, it was like watching dominoes fall. The judge recessed for the day, said he'd return with a preliminary decision in the morning. Vanessa brushed past me on her way out, muttering, "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. I just smiled. I already had. That night, I got a call from Jake. She tried to pay me off. He said, told me to change my statement before tomorrow. I asked him what he said back. He laughed. I told her I'd already made peace with going down, but I wasn't going down alone. Respect, I wasn't expecting it from Jake, but in that moment he earned it. The next morning, the courtroom was quieter, tense. The judge walked in with his decision. The court finds substantial and compelling evidence of fraud in the revision of the will, and therefore rules in favor of the plaintiff, Raymond Cole. I exhaled for the first time in days. Vanessa didn't even move. The judge continued. The house and all associated assets are to be returned to Mr. Cole. Miss Vanessa Fields is ordered to repay damages, and a formal report will be filed with the district attorney regarding potential criminal conduct. That was it. My house, my father's legacy, mine again. As we were leaving, Vanessa finally spoke. "You think you won," she hissed, catching me by the arm. "You humiliated me." I looked at her, really looked, and said, "No, you did that all by yourself." Then I walked out. I thought it was over, but just when I started rebuilding, Vanessa came back one last time, not for the house, but for revenge. I thought it was over. I had the house back. Vanessa was out of my life. The judge had ruled in my favor, and criminal charges were pending against her. My lawyer even popped open a bottle of cheap champagne in her office that day. I laughed for real, for the first time in months. But revenge doesn't always stop at the courtroom door, especially when the person you're dealing with is someone like Vanessa, someone who doesn't just want to win, she wants you to lose. 2 weeks after the trial, I came home from the grocery store and saw the damage. My front door had been kicked in. The kitchen window was shattered. The living room looked like a tornado had passed through it. Everything my dad had left behind, old photos, his military medals, the books he used to read, torn, burned, destroyed, and on the wall, written in black spray paint, were just 2 words: "Your turn." I knew who did it. No one else hated me that much. The cops came, took photos, filed a report, but with no cameras and no physical evidence, they said it'd be hard to prove. I wasn't surprised. Vanessa was smart enough not to get caught this time, but that's where she made her mistake. She thought I needed proof. She forgot I still had leverage. See, during the lawsuit, we uncovered everything, not just the forged will. We found undeclared offshore accounts, fraudulent tax returns, and one particular little contract she'd signed under a fake name to secure a car loan using forged documents. All of it was quietly logged, and my lawyer had already handed it over to a contact in the DA's office just in case she tried something exactly like this. 2 days later, I got the call. "Mr. Cole, this is Detective Harmon, Financial Crimes Unit. We've opened an investigation into Vanessa Fields based on your legal team's submission. Are you available to give a full statement?" You bet I was. I told them everything: the break-in, the spray paint, her past behavior, how she faked her way into my father's estate, then tried to frame herself as the victim in court. The detective just nodded. "We've had our eye on her. She's made enemies in 3 counties. 2 weeks later, they arrested her. Not for the break-in, not yet, but for fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. They had enough to put her away for 5 years minimum, and when the DA announced charges, they used my name as the cooperating witness. Vanessa tried to paint me as the villain on social media. She made tearful videos, blaming a vengeful ex for ruining her life. Comments were split. Some believed her, most didn't, but I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because 2 months later she was in court again, this time in an orange jumpsuit, and I didn't even bother to show up. Let the system handle it. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. The house took some work. I replaced the broken window, repainted the living room, hung up a few new photos, ones that mattered. Me, my dad, my dog. No lies, no fakes, no drama. I even turned the garage into a little woodshop. My dad always wanted one, and for the first time in years, life felt quiet again. Not perfect, not easy, but mine. People ask me sometimes if I'd do it all again, the digging, the waiting, the patience, and I tell them this: revenge isn't about yelling louder or swinging harder or swinging harder. It's about letting them think they've won, right until the moment you take it all back, piece by piece. She stole everything from me. I let her enjoy it. Then I took it all back, and more.
My name's Lila Jennings, 34, divorced, no kids, and up until last month I thought the scariest thing in life was starting over. I was wrong. It all started when I moved into my aunt's old cabin in a tiny Oregon coastal town called Red Harbor. I'd inherited it after she passed suddenly. No warning, no illness. Just didn't wake up one morning. Everyone told me to sell it. Too remote, they said. You'll go crazy out there alone. But that's exactly why I chose it. I wanted to disappear for a while. From the city. From my ex. From the whole damn noise of my life. At first it was peaceful. Mornings with coffee on the porch, the sound of waves in the distance, the smell of pine everywhere. Nights were still, eerily still, like time just paused out here. But then weird things started happening. Small stuff at first, like my phone, dying overnight even though it was plugged in, or the back door being unlocked when I swore I locked it. I chalked it up to forgetfulness, stress. Then one morning I found muddy footprints in the kitchen. Too big to be mine. I live alone. I stood there staring at them, my heart thumping so hard I felt it in my throat. I didn't call the cops. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought if I ignored it, it would go away. I cleaned it up, locked every door and window, even started keeping a knife by my bed. Just in case. Then, 3 days later, I found something worse. There's this crawl space under the cabin. Nothing more than a hatch in the floor of the pantry. I never thought to open it. But that morning, the hatch was cracked open, and inside was a small wooden box. Old, dusty, and locked. I don't know why I even opened it. Maybe I felt like it was calling me. Or maybe I was already losing it. I picked the lock with a bobby pin. Inside were a bunch of photos, black and white, curled at the edges. All of women. Different ages, different years. All with the same handwritten word on the back, replacement. One photo was of me. Taken outside the cabin. I don't know when. I don't remember ever posing for it. That night I barely slept. Every creak, every gust of wind outside made me jump. At 3:12 a.m. I heard it. The hatch slammed shut. I ran into the pantry, knife in hand. It was closed. Locked. Just like I'd left it. But taped to the top was a note, written in red marker, block, letters. You shouldn't have come back. I didn't even know I'd been here before. But apparently someone thinks I had. And now, I'm starting to wonder if maybe I have. But that doesn't make any sense. Right? The next morning, I woke up with blood under my nails. Not a lot. Just enough to send my stomach lurching. I checked my body for scratches. Nothing. I even looked under the sheets. No cuts, no sign of anything. I wasn't hurt. But someone, or something, was. Still shaken, I drove into town for supplies. Red Harbor's not much, gas station, a diner, a post office that's closed more than it's open. Everyone stares a little too long, like they know something I don't. At the diner, the waitress, a woman in her 60s with a smoker's voice and sharp eyes, looked me over and said, "You're not the first." I froze. The first what? She just shrugged and dropped my receipt without another word. That night, I checked the attic. I don't know why. Something just kept pulling at me, like there was a string tied around my ribs, tugging me upward. The attic stairs groaned like they hadn't been touched in years. Dust floated in thick layers. And in the far corner, I saw it. A mirror. Not some handheld thing. This was a tall, full-body antique mirror, tucked under a dusty sheet. I pulled the cover off and I gasped. Because the reflection wasn't right. It was me, but not me. The woman in the mirror had my face, but she wasn't copying my movements. Her eyes blinked when mine didn't. She smiled when I didn't. I took a step back. She didn't. Then she mouthed something. Not again. I slammed the sheet back over the mirror and ran downstairs. I should have left then. I should have packed up and burned the place down. But something stopped me. I needed answers. I deserved answers. So I went back to the crawl space. This time, I took a flashlight and a crowbar. The hatch creaked open like it had been expecting me. I climbed down, feet hitting the dirt, the smell of damp earth crawling up my nose. What I found under there was a hallway, wooden, narrow, with a line of light bulbs strung along the ceiling, flickering every few seconds. It wasn't supposed to be there. The cabin had no basement, no floor plans, no records, nothing. But the hallway went on. And the walls? They were covered in photographs. More women. More versions of me. Some smiling. Some terrified. Some lifeless. At the end of the hallway was a door, and written on it, in that same red marker, Cycle 11. Do not activate. But I did. I opened the door, and standing there was me, tied to a chair, mouth gagged, eyes wide with terror. I took a step back, bile rising in my throat, and then a voice from behind whispered, "Replacement confirmed." She looked just like me. Same nose, same scar on the eyebrow I got from falling off a swing when I was 8. Same chipped tooth. Even the little mole under my jaw. It was me. But her eyes, they were begging. She tried to scream, but the gag muffled everything. She shook her head violently, desperately. Her whole body trembled. I stumbled back, hand over my mouth, whispering, "What the hell is this?" Then I heard it. That voice again. Calm. Male. So close it felt like it was coming from inside my head. Replacement confirmed. Cycle 11 in progress. I turned around, but no one was there. Just the hallway. Empty. Silent. I rushed to the woman. No. To her. To me. Untied the gag. She gasped, coughing, tears streaming down her face. "You're not real," she whispered, eyes wide with horror. "You're just another copy." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. "They print us, like pages, test us, reset us, kill the ones that remember." She clutched my wrist with surprising strength. "If you're here, they know you're unstable. You'll glitch, like me." I shook my head. "No, I live here. This is my life." She laughed, bitter and broken. That's what I thought too, until I found the mirror. The mirror. I thought about the attic, her mouth moving out of sync. That look, like she knew me before I knew her. Before I could ask another question, the lights above flickered and dimmed. Then, sirens. A low mechanical alarm echoing through the hallway. The door slammed shut behind me. "They're coming," she said. "Who's they?" But she didn't answer. She just lunged forward, grabbed the crowbar from my hand, and smashed a hidden panel behind the chair. The wall cracked open. Behind it, another tunnel. "Run," she said. "You might still have time." I hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" She looked at me, eyes hollow. "Because if one of us makes it out, maybe that's enough." I turned and ran. The tunnel was narrow, damp, endless. My breath echoed like thunder. I didn't know what I was running toward, only what I was running from. Eventually I hit a dead end. No doors. No lights. But carved into the wall was something that made me drop to my knees. My name? Savannah Lane. Cycle, 11. Status, observation failed, termination pending, and right below it, a new name. Savannah Lane Cycle 12. Status, in progress, memory reset. At 0314 I looked at my watch. It was 3:14. Then, darkness, total, and a voice, one I recognized. "Welcome back, Savannah. Let's try again."